to a very special Thursday afternoon non-MMA show on the channel. I am your host. I am the Paragon of Virtue. I am Lou Betya. We're talking Belmont today, all 12 races on Saturday's card. I am joined by somebody I respect a lot in the community, even though he will play it very modestly. He's a DFS guy. He's a finance guy. He's a man of many tastes, and he's a horse racing guy for the sake of this show. My guy, Sheets Pones, otherwise known as Eric. Sheets, welcome to the channel. Finally get to work together. How you feeling about this card? How's your day going? All that fun stuff.
Well, I appreciate the lead in or whatever. You know, I definitely dabble in a lot of different things. I mean, to give you one example, it was really funny. Just a couple of months ago, my hedge fund, I was kind of wrapping up some trades at like 4:30. And then at the same time, what I did was I launched a DFS video where I was talking about how to line up build for the LCS League of Legends slate. Okay. And while that was going on, I noticed that we were live in Gulfstream Park jackpot pick 6 for 100,000 with one race left to go. So I actually pivoted everything and I live streamed that actual race over YouTube. We actually got up and won by a nose live in front of like all 17 people that were watching me, I think. So I got a lot of things going on. I've had a lot of experience with all different types of degenerate gambling, from harness racing in freaking Yonkers to the stock market, to poker, to backing people in poker, to DFS, to sweating Cody Brundage, you know, all kinds of different levels of degeneracy. But my screen name, actually, Sheets, which not that many people know, actually is derived originally from horse racing. And that goes back forever. I mean, there's a very well-known data product called The Sheets that a lot of advanced players use. And like 25, 30 years ago, people would see me walking around with these sets of sheets and they'd just start calling me Sheets. And that's kind of where this whole Sheets kind of persona started. So goes all the way back to that. So horse racing is pretty much my main source of degeneracy, like going back like way back. So I'm kind of excited to talk about the Belmont card. I'm going to try to make it as educational as possible without going too far into the weeds, and we'll see how this goes.
I don't know if you know this, but Cody Brundage is not only a friend of the channel, but he's the fighter that I've talked with the most since I started this endeavor. So he has
the fact that you would think that I don't know that is sort of insulting. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm a big MMA aficionado, both from betting and DFS, and the MMA Engine is one of my real go-to sites as far as sites, I guess, to get information from. And your relationship with Cody Brundage is not unknown to me. So
flattery will get you everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Cody, it's just funny. I know before we get to this, like, it's funny. So when they announced Cody's fight against Bo Nickel, and I love Bo Nickel too. I mean, I'm a Pennsylvanian guy, like, love Bo Nickel. You know, everybody's tagging me. They're like, Lou, your boy's dead. And I'm like, oh no, like, this is who made this fight. And immediately Cody just has an alert. Like, anybody talking about him, he's like, he's got to know. And he sends me a DM and he's like, you really don't think this is a good fight for me? I'm like, no, dude, he's a savage. Like, what are you doing? A terrible fight. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna be a main event on a pay-per-view, or like gonna be a main card in a pay-per-view. I'm like, yeah, that part's cool, but like, he goes, so what would you advise? I'm like, other than like, don't take the fight. Like I said, if you grapple, we are no longer friends. If you try to take him down, I am not speaking to you ever again. If you don't bonk him in 30 seconds, it's done. And look, sure enough, he just went out there and threw strikes, and I'm like, all right, at least that's the right idea. And then it was inevitable that, you know, Bo's like a bear, so it was going to happen. But what are you going to do? But a little setup for my people. Anybody watching this live, I know it's Thursday afternoon. Thank you very much for spending time with us. I'm sure people will be watching this as I overly promote it Saturday and Friday. So just a little for you guys to know, I have said this every single horse video I've made. I am not an expert. I'm somebody who loves it. I'm somebody who understands how to bet it. Does not mean I am super successful at it. Last year, I had a very good year. This year, haven't hit the main races, but I've done okay on, we're going to get to a horse on this card named the Gun Pilot that was very, very good to me. earlier in the year. So, and then we have some horses from last year making an appearance here, Sheets. We got National Treasure and White Barrio making a little return trip. So some horses you guys might remember from last year, and some new horses in the Belmont main race that you can get very excited about that we're going to talk about. So I hope you're interested in this whole card. For the first three, I'm going to let my guest take over, as I am woefully unprepared for those first three. I thought we were just doing the 9 stakes races. So I have everything from those ready, but I will let my guest give you guys insight. And not only that, but in terms of good betting tricks. And because this is unlike other sports, you can't beat the market here. You're just getting what the closing price is. So you could have an idea what it'll close at. Maybe that's how you make your picks. Wait, I'd like Eric to talk about like how many horses get scratched on the Saturday morning, because it's kind of infuriating and outrageous, but I will leave it to you, my friend.
Let's start with just some kind of like overall disclaimers. And this is why kind of like horse racing content in general is kind of awful. Okay. Because we're doing this 2 days in advance, and horse racing, more than almost any sport, is completely value based. In other words, there are horses that would be incredible bets at 5-1 that are just atrocious bets at 2-1. And you're not going to know exactly what your odds are until literally 30 seconds to post. So there's literally no reason to bet anything until then. So when I go through what I like here, it's really going to be dependent on the odds and how they actually are closing. So I'm going to do my best, in spite of that, to give you some at least odds parameters. Okay. The other thing about this particular card is it's one of the very few cards where, I mean, you kind of have a chance, like if you're not an expert, to win money, because you have the 3 Triple Crown races and the Breeders' Cup, and those four cards just bring in all of the casuals and all of kind of the regular bettors. Like most of the people out there, if you're not experts, if you try to go like day to day at some of these like Gulfstream Park, you'll just get chewed up, okay, by the computer programs, by just the experts. But in these particular cards, you have a shot. Okay, as I like to say in poker, like the kind of okay bad reg can actually win, like at these types of tracks, because there's just so much money of kind of dead money in there. And that's why I do like to go over like all the other races, because those particular races on cards like this are probably the best values of the whole year, like kind of like the prelims of the big races. And that's kind of what I found. The other
Do you
thing
think it's because of casual money not being informed and just spending more than usual? Is that the biggest?
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And not only that, but Sheets players and people that really know what they're doing also, they don't have to worry about cards like this either. And that's why I don't mind giving content on cards like this, because no one's gonna, even if you guys put all your money in, you're not going to really affect my price. Okay, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. So I really think that if you follow what I say, I'm not saying you're going to win, obviously, but you're certainly going to do better than you would on your own, and you're probably in the long run going to have some good value here. Now, again, a couple of disclaimers. Number one, it could rain on Saturday. As a matter of fact, right now it's about 94% chance of rain. Now, does that mean it's going to rain during the races? Who knows? Does that mean it's going to be so sloppy that's going to affect a horse's chances to win? I don't know that in advance. Now, the fact is there are going to be some horses that may have big upgrades because of the slop. We just don't know that yet. So with all that in mind, with scratches in mind and everything else in mind, what I'm going to be turning this into, unfortunately, is just kind of like a picks video, okay? Because I can't really get into all sheet theory about how I come up with all this stuff. It's just going to really be who I think are good values. And we're going to go straight back to race number 1. Now, here's the other thing. There are going to be probably 2 races throughout the course of the day that I think are just complete passes. And that's one of the good things about being able to bet online, is that if you're at the track, passing races is like nearly impossible, okay? Because you're like there anyway. So you're just going to be forced to bet. But when you're online and 700 other things going on, you can't actually pass on a couple of races. So I guess I'll just get started.
It's like we have 14 fights this weekend for the fights, and it's like, do I have to bet Brad Katona? No, I don't have to bet that one. That one I can pass on.
Well, thank God for that. But so in the first race, actually, I do like Classic Legacy is clearly the most likely winner. Now again, 7-2 is not that great. But one thing that you'll see is that horses that don't win too often, like you see this horse got second, third. These horses tend to actually be kind of undervalued because people get really, really, bogged down with the idea of winning and like finishing positions and things like that. But based on my research for 25 years of doing this, it's not really as predictive as people would think, So if you see a horse that you like based on the sheets or based or whatever, and they don't win all that often, don't really worry too much about that. Those are actually, you get a little bit of value on that, as opposed to other horses that just seem to win. Usually that's just because of kind of luck and variance. They actually win. So those horses tend to be sort of overvalued. So this Classic Legacy at 7-2, I think is pretty reasonable. But if you want to have another horse in here that's going to be a little bit longer that you could try, and that would be Assume Nothing. So right off the bat, I do think Assume Nothing at 12-1. I mean, that's obviously going to be pretty good value, but anything probably over, I would say 8-9-1 on that horse. And this Classic Legacy, anything over, I think 3-1 is worth doing. And the reason why I bring this up is I like horses in kind of races 2 and 3. So if you want to play those two horses on top of daily doubles or pick threes or whatever, feel free. But those are two that I kind of like right off the bat. The second race, I actually feel that race 2 has the best value on the entire card. So I figured I would just come right out with that one. Storm Miami from the 4 horse is 10-1 morning line. I make this horse based on my work probably about 33% to win. It's clearly, as far as I'm looking at it, the most likely winner in the race. And what's good about it is that I'm not too worried about him getting slammed at the windows, because again, if you look at it, most people look at the racing form and they'll see, well, I don't know, he's got these Ireland races, and even these Ireland races got a fourth, a third, a fourth, a second. And his first only race here at Gulfstream, he had just the sixth and finished fourth. Doesn't really look like an inspiring horse you really want to be betting. So I'm not too worried about this horse getting kind of slammed. Now, if this were at a regular, Tuesday at Gulfstream Park, like all the sheets players and everybody that know what they were doing would pound this horse down to 9-5, and it just wouldn't be worth it. But I have a feeling that it's just going to be kind of ignored just because of the way it looks on the racing form. So anything even over 5-1 is really good. And I would say literally of the 12 races and the 120 horses racing, this is probably the best overall value. So if you want to play like that first race, Classic Legacy with what was it, Quick to Accuse, that was the other one, along with Storm Miami in doubles, I mean, it's not going to win more than 10% of the time, or maybe even 5%, but it's probably going to pay like 150 on a $2 bet. So I definitely think that's good value. And then to catch you up, we'll get to the third race, and then we're going to get to your gun pilot, right? In the third race, I think that the 6 horse Awesome Native is, I want to say a lock, because lock, you know how it works, even MMA also. It's definitely the most likely winner. It's probably should be 7-5, but again, it doesn't look all that great on the racing form, so it's probably going to be kind of held back a little bit. So if you get this horse at kind of 3-1, I think that's worth doing. And the other horse I might use in this race is all the way at the bottom, Thrill of It. He is 12-1 or so, or 10-1, and he's probably going to even be longer, just again because he just doesn't look all that great on the form. Which
I have 10-1 on mine right now. So
10-1, right? Which is kind of like what I like to see. So in these first 3 races, I mean, again, I think you can get right off the bat. You can go into the hole really, really quickly and really start cursing me before we even get started. So I think it's a good place to start. So again, a Classic Legacy and Quick to Accuse race 1. Storm Miami, clearly the best value on the whole day in race 2. And then Awesome Native, probably a lock in race 3 with Thrill of It, some value as well.
All right. So that's 3 quick winners we got on the program already, and now I'm going to ruin it with my picks. But so what are we on now? The Poker Stakes, the 4th race?
Yep, race 4, the True North Stakes.
Okay, so the True North.
That's the one with your gun pilot.
You're right. The True North 6. So it's only 7 horses in this race. Gun Pilot was really good at the I can't remember if it was the Derby or not, Churchill Downs. I think it was the last race. But that was an easy win. It's the fast. There's 3 horses in this race that have 100 speed figures, but I don't like to base everything on that. In fact, this would be a good, interesting thing to talk about is how pace plays in a race. Like, you don't just look at speed figures. That you just talked about the track, and I think people obviously can tell that different turfs and different, moistures in the ground matter. But how fast a race is run and what the pace is at the halfway point affects different styles of horses. Like, it affects closers. It affects, I mean, I don't know if you want to get into like that kind of theory when you cap, but we've seen super fast paces, especially in these Triple Crown races where, some horses gas out if the pace is too much, if they're trying not to stay behind too much and they want to just stay on the lead or close to the lead, where maybe they don't have the endurance to go 1.25 miles for this.
Well, since you brought it up, again, through doing this for as long as I have, I've looked at all different ways of handicapping. Right from the beginning, I was starting with just using the racing form and doing that. I did all kinds of work on pace stuff for like a long time. The idea being that it sounds like such a nice thing, easy thing to say, like pace makes the race. So the idea that if you could figure out, if you could figure out that you're gonna have 3 horses battling on the lead, for example, you might want to downgrade those 3 horses and pick horses coming from behind. And there were like advanced pace figures and advanced kind of concepts as far as that goes. I also did work where I just looked at replays, like literally, like just replay look. I have like notebooks back from when I was at the fairgrounds in New Orleans of trip notes and who looked good and who was this, that, and the other thing. And then when I got involved in the sheets, Lou, and I looked at the numbers and all the things they take into account, all those types of things, like pace and things like that. I'm not saying that they're irrelevant. I'm just saying that they're kind of overstated at best, and also it just becomes it's a more difficult thing to predict than people think. And I've seen this all the time. I've seen a horse that just looks too slow on the sheets, that people would say, oh, but look, it's going to get the lead or something like that. And this other horse that looked really good on the sheets, people were worrying, how's this horse ever going to get into the race? It's going to be a slow pace. And just from my experience, those horses that look good, that are supposed to win anyway, they usually just overcome that stuff, just, again, like kind of more than you think. So I'm like one of those like evil guys that just kind of like takes those types of things and turns them into kind of narratives and say, don't worry too much about that kind of stuff. Yes, if you know for a fact that some horse is going to get loose on the lead and shut the pace down and just like everybody else in behind is going to be difficult, yes, but I think it's much more difficult to predict that than people think.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's another factor. I mean, look, it can be overwhelming if you're just getting started doing this, reading a racing form. So for me on this race, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. There's not a lot of value for me on here. I think Gun Pilot's just a lot, like it's levels of class above. As far as like how to play it, it's tricky for me. I'm like a known tap it hater, so which means I don't want to like bet any horses that were even sired by it. So I would say the 6 for me would maybe be a pass. But I think Baby Yoda's overvalued. I think there's a 114 speed figure in one of the races. Other than that, I don't know. I'm not super impressed with what I've seen from Baby Yoda. I'd probably go 1-5-2 here if I had to play an exacta, but I don't think there's a lot of value here. I think I could almost pass on it completely, but I mean, a straight bet on Gun Pilot in a 7-horse race at even money isn't awful, but it's not like you're not going to make big money on this race the way I'm playing it.
Yeah, I my notes on this race is I'll just read it. Like, Gun Pilot might just be a lock, but it's not the greatest value. And you basically said the same thing. The race is probably a pass. And I looked at ways to force stuff. I always try to find ways to force stuff like any good degenerate does. But I thought Gunnet was okay. Baby Yoda was okay. Accreted was okay. But no matter what you do, you're just going to end up probably paying the rake in this one at best. So I would probably avoid this. Now, here's one thing that I sometimes think about is if you really have a good opinion in like other races, like I like Classic Legacy a lot, and Quick to Accuse and Storm Miami race 2 and Awesome Native race 3. Should you dilute that by using, say, let's just say you wanted to bet a pick 4 and you wanted to use something in race 4? Is it okay to take kind of bad value in Gun Pilot, knowing that your other legs are good values? It's kind of like take an MMA thing, it's like to put like a parlay piece that's kind of shitty just because you have like other kind of better opinions or whatever it is. Maybe it's not the greatest example in the world, but I've come to believe that you got to be very, very stingy, and that if you don't think it's good value, you should just probably just kind of pass on it. So I'm probably going to pass this race. Now, when I say that, I very well may bet it, but I'm probably going to be off of this race, and I'll actually.
I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to stay at even money. I think by the time this race is ready to go off, he might be. He's
going to be 3 to 5.
Yes, I don't think you're even going to get great value here, but we will move on. Now we're at the poker stakes. 8-horse race. This is a mile. This is a grade 3 race. And the favorite is Casa Creed, followed up by Carl Spackler. Your thoughts? Also, we have a lot of Irish horses on this card. A lot.
My thoughts, and we as you might imagine, we haven't talked about this card at all. So I hate to pass it right back to you, but I just put basically a wheel, just don't bet at all. So I really just have no opinion for you guys in this race.
Yeah, this isn't. I'm gonna just echo that sentiment. This is another one where I don't think I'm big on Carl Spackler at 2 to 1. That's probably, I think you're getting horrible value there. Casa Creed, fastest horse, certainly looks like the best horse in the race. At 9 to 5, I'm not really interested. And as far as everything else here goes, if you wanted to take a value shot, I think Kubrick's okay. Pretty consistent horse. Running out of the 6. Also, it's right next to the biggest long shot in the race, Front Rud the Fed, which morally I would never bet a horse named Front Rud the Fed, but might be able to break well and get some separation early. So 8 to 1's not bad. I just want to talk about the 8 Lucky Score. I'm not betting this horse, but I've never heard a horse with more of a race horsey name than Lucky Score. That just seems like somebody's like, I want to race a horse, and I just do not know what to name my horse.
That's pretty funny.
And I want it to be maybe pretty good. And they're like, how about Lucky Score? Like, all right, done. So nothing for us in the 5th race. No real value there. We are moving on. We are at the Suburban Stakes, the 6th race of the day. The current favorite is, we've got 3 very chalky favorites here. Charge It. Another Tappet horse. God damn it, man. All these Tappet horses killing me. Ben Duke and Krupe coming in. Another Pletcher horse, actually, at 7. They are your 3 favorites. 8 horse in the race. Do you see any value on this one with 3 pretty chalky favorites here?
Yeah, I listen. Again, race 4, I didn't really want to bet anything, and then like race 5, I want to pass 2, and you could feel it. You could feel like you can't bet past 3 races in a row, right? So I did come up with something here. So first of all, I'll read you my notes. So Ben Dog I put as solid enough, I guess. Charge It I guess is okay, and Kuchar, Masquerade okay, but we could try something at like $1 billion to 1 just for funsies, and that's going to be Good Skate. I have him just basically about, I don't know, I think like probably 6-7 to 1 is more fair value on this horse, and he looks, again, kind of crappy. He's going to be pretty long, I think. And I don't know. The other horses are solid. And I definitely think that Good Skate is probably, you run this race 100 times, he's not going to win as often as some of these others. But if you want to get something rolling, I think Good Skate at 20 to 1 is worth what do you say? Worth a poke.
That's funny because I like that underneath for like a superfecta shot here. I think out of all the horses, so Charge It, while seeming to have like the best past runs, I feel like Krupe might be the best horse here, especially in a wet track at 7. I like being to the left of Ben Duke. There's going to be a nice pace set there, probably early. So I don't know if Charge It's going to get like kind of pinned in between here in the middle of the track. I know it doesn't really mean much for an 8-horse race, but if there's any chance, it seems like Charger just needs to front run, get on an early pace. Maybe just gets a bad trip early, but I think at 3-1 out of all the favorites, it's an okay play. I'm with you. I think Good Skate's okay. I had it underneath. Second worst speed figure in this race. Second 92 is what I have listed. So I don't know. I think it's a decent play underneath, but for me, this is another pass for me. I'd play Krupe. We'll see how I feel. I'll see how it moves. I kind of feel that Ben Doog is probably going to be the horse that gets the most action. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
I think so.
So I think that horse might go down to not evens, but maybe close. And then we'll see if Krupe maybe goes up a little bit. So, all right. So not much on that one for us, but what are you going to do? You can't get them all. Now this is a race where you want to talk about, it's hard to find value here. We've got the Ogden Phillips, the 7th race, 1 1/8 mile. I mean, look, man, this is a 6-horse race. It's a 6-horse race. And this is another one like the Gun Pilot race where there's a very, very clear class difference between Idiomatic and everybody else in this race. I don't know if you have a way to play this that's not laying. I mean, the horse is 3-5 right now on Idiomatic, and I don't know how much worse it's going to get, but I feel like it's going to get. Anyone that wants to play chalk here may just play this horse straight up.
It won't be me. So I got something for you here. So I have a super value horse here. I actually have 2 of them. I have the Idiomatic, maybe most likely winner, but really short. I think that Tizzy in the Sky at 12-1 is one of the best values on the card. I make him not quite as likely to win as Idiomatic, but I think close enough. So I definitely like that. And also I do like Raging Sea. So I'm at 9-2. Now he's not going to be as long. Number one, because he's 9-2 morning line. Number 2, he's coming off of 3 wins in a row. So for me, I am going to be taking my shot at Tizzy in the Sky. And one thing I will say is that when you have a horse like Idiomatic who's 3-5 and it's a 6-horse field, it's going to be even worse. I mean, it's going to be like 1-9 this horse. I will also say this. I hate to do, it's going to be, it's not going to be that kind of race, but if it's like Sloppy, for example, and like they really pound this horse, I mean, he could have like $1 million minus show pool on this horse, and I might even try to beat it. So I'm a little different than you on this one. I am actually going to be using Tizzy as really super value. My only problem is that I don't really like too much in the next race. But listen, I'll say this, that if Good Skate wins race 6 and Tizzy wins race 7 and you have literally $1,000 double come in, I encourage everybody, listen, it's $2 freaking dollars. Okay, whatever. I would put $2 on that so that when you hear me like yelling, like screaming through the Discord, that you guys have $2 on that. It's going to happen once every 300 times or whatever, but it's going to pay more like 1,200. So that's where I am on that race.
$2 is nothing to me. I make that in a week.
Right. Exactly.
I make that in a week. It's nothing to me.
Very good. You trotted that out. Like, I think you've used that somewhere before.
I've used it many times and it never gets old, especially when you're like at a convenience store and your change is 3 cents. I'm like, keep it. Make that in a week. It's nothing to me. And they're like, you don't want your change? And I'm like, oh my God. All right, well, I do have a good feeling about this next race. We're at the Woody Stevens.
Awesome, because I have wheel no value pass. So you tell me what I'm supposed to do. How about that?
Okay, well, I'll do my best. So what I will say is this, and now we're at the Baffert part of the experience here. Prince of Monaco at 7-2. It's a decent horse, but I don't like the value here, especially because I think historically the Woody Stevens produces some really wonky results for whatever reason. This seems to be that weird race where you get some long shots coming in. And I think there's value in this mid-range. I think Valentine Candy at 6-1 from Justify is a good play. I think Vlahos at 6-1 is also a good play. But since you came in with a big underdog last one, I'm going to come in with a little bit of an underdog here. And that's Frost Free at the 5, Jose Ortiz horse. I think this horse can have a sneaky good run, especially if the track's wet. And I think at 15-1, it's not going to stay there. I think that horse, out of all these horses in the longer range, is going to get hit. We have a lot of horses at 15-1 here. If anybody's ever watched my content, I am it would be irresponsible of me to bet reasoned analysis ever. That just doesn't seem like a Lou play. I know that Miss Betya is a big fan of Nutella Fella, so I have to go spend $2-3 on that horse. Because if Nutella Fella wins and I didn't bet it, I will never hear the end of it. It'll be the end of my relationship. So
you're a big Nutella guy?
I'm not, but she, I mean, she's like, as soon as she looked at the horse, she's like, "Oh, you're betting that one." I'm like, okay. Like, if I don't bet it and it wins, I'll never hear the end of it, and I can't have that. But I think this is where I want to get a little fun, and I want to do a little trifecta box with the 5 Frost Freeze, Valentine Candy at 4, and Vlahos at 8. 4, 5, 8. Little trifecta box here for $6. And if it hits, I mean, this should be, especially if you get Frosts on top, it's a nice little payout there, 15-1, and a couple of 6-1s coming in.
Reason analysis. I can't see you do it. Except, I mean, you could always look at the jockey. I mean, like, you could always cancel it.
That's the name of the horse. Yeah, cancel and reason analysis. I'm like, these are things I can't bet. I just have to stay off the source completely. Even if it wins, it's fine. Like, I have to bet Nutella Fella for her, and I have to not bet reasoned analysis for my own sanity here. But I do like this race. Over the years, this has been like a weird. This is like, I almost feel like where the day really starts, especially because this is one of the first races that they show on like Peacock, and like, you know, this is right before it goes to NBC, but like, this is when they start showing a lot of these races on like whatever affiliate it is. So you're not watching it on like FanDuel Racing TV, like, but so this is where I think it kicks off. And my guy Moyes, what's up, brother? See, this is fandom. You know, $10 a view from this guy is worth it to get my people in here.
That's it.
But we are moving on from the Woody Stevens. Now we are at the Jaipur Stakes, presented by Resolute Racing, by the way. And now we get to the biggest field I believe this is the biggest field of the day for one race. 16 horses in this one.
It's 16 horses going 5.5 furlongs.
Yeah, this is a mad sprint. This is like a potato sack race.
It's a war. So I actually don't see too much value in here, but here are the 3 horses I like. Now here's the thing, you know, this is the reality of betting on these big cards, right? So Belmont Stakes is the 12th race, right? So if you want to be a real DGen, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to start with race 7 and bet the pick 6 with whoever you like in the Belmont Stakes, right? Then when that loses, you're supposed to start with race 8 and bet the pick 5. And then when that loses, race 9, bet the pick 4, etc. So that when you finally get to the Belmont Stakes, you've lost everything else. Whoever you like in the Belmont Stakes, you can win and still lose money, right? So if we started with Tizzy and we're not live, you know, whatever, then we're probably got to do something in race 8, you know, which you mentioned. So race 9, the hell if I'm passing this race, even though I don't find such great value. So it's going to be Arback, Dancing Buck, and Cockburn. I have all those as kind of like looking just kind of like okay. So actually it was Arzak, I guess. Dancing Buck and Cockburn. So all those I think are just kind of okay. I wouldn't start anything, you know, expecting some great value out of them, but just to get something going, to get yourself live for your Belmont Stakes stuff, I would use those horses.
Yeah, I like Cogburn. It's not what my guy Mick is saying in the chat. For those of you just listening to all the audio versions of this that I never make, I really wanted to get to Star of Mystery. I looked at this horse. I think this, you know, and I don't want to sound a weird way, but some of these Great Britain horses weirdly tend to get overvalued, at least in my experience. I don't know if it's historical, but I feel like the last few years, I never find odds that I really find inviting here. So 6-1, I don't really love it. I'm Italian, so like do I bet Coppola? I almost feel like compelled, but honestly, I'm not impressed. And at 20-1, I don't think this hits the board. I like Cogburn like you do. This is a tricky one for value. I know there's some horses that are also eligible that I don't believe are in it yet. I know that Groom's All Business annoyed me at Churchill Downs or at the Preakness, so I don't know that I want to get involved there, but I think Cogburn, and this is, a lot of Irad Ortiz horses are the favorites in this race, which might be important later, but I don't have a great feeling here. I think Cogburn's probably the side at 2-1. I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about this race, to be honest.
But so far we're in good shape. So we're going to win like so much money because when Tizzy's going to win race 7, going to win a fortune. Your long shot's going to win race 8. So we're going to be live with the pick 6 there. And race 9, we'll just kind of get out of this one alive with these. So we're already 3 for 3 in the pick 6 going into the last 3. So we're in business here.
That's the attitude I love.
Yeah, and again with the idea that there's always a pick 4 and there's always a pick 3 like later. So race number 10. What this race comes down for me is whether I'm actually going to use White Abarrio or just toss him completely. I like the 3 other contenders here just much more, and that would be Blazing Sevens, Post Time, and National Treasure. None of them are particularly long. Actually, that's not true. Blazing Sevens is long enough at 8-1.
Yeah, 8-1's decent.
Yeah, and I just wonder if I'm being too greedy by tossing White Abarrio completely. I definitely don't think he's any better than those other 3. But again, like I said, like if I get like Tizzy or some other long shot home where we get to the next race in a minute, I don't know if I want to lose because I tossed White Abarrio. I definitely think that Blazing Sevens is going to be the best value in the race. But aside from that, it's just the other contenders.
Yeah, I 1,000,000% agree with Blazing Sevens. I think that, the only thing I guess you'd worry about with Blazing Sevens is, what is this, the 10th race, 11th race of Blazing Sevens' career? But they're spread out over a couple of years. Only had 1 race this year. So last year was the hectic schedule. Looked great in the Preakness against National Treasure. I hung in there the whole race. National Treasure was clearly like the A-horse in that race. And Blazing Sevens hung in there. Aside from 1 bad race at the 2023 Fountain of Youth, it's a horse that's always competitive, typically in the 90s speed figures, going to be there at the end. I think there's great value. I don't really know what to do here because I'm with you, and I think the 1 and the 5 are in a 6-horse race. I don't need to get to them at all. You're not really going to make any money. Look, instead of tossing White Abarrio, if you want to put Blazing Sevens on top and maybe box the other 3 to come in second and third, I don't know if there's any real value or any real reason to do that, but I sort of feel like it's a very big class difference between those 4 and the 2 underdogs.
Well, one of the problems with Blazing Sevens is Chad Brown, and I say that only because, well, this is a weird segue, but one of the apps I'm involved in is actually a sports betting app where what we do is you can upload your betting history, and what that'll do, it'll show you like what your biases are, and it'll say, how often do you bet home underdogs? How often do you bet like Michigan, or how often do you bet Big Ten teams? And then it'll rank like how you do when you bet those things, like your XYZ betting home dogs, your XYZ betting Big East, and whatever it is, just to give you a sense for where your biases are and how you do in certain spots. If I did one for horse racing, I would be down so much money trying to beat Chad Brown when he was a terrible favorite and trying to bet on him when he looked like a good-looking underdog. So as far as my biases go and my don't listen to me in general with Chad Brown. So with that said, that's my one concern with the Blazing Sevens.
All right. Look, and for the people that are listening, like, we're trying to squeeze value out of this too. There's 3 very heavy favorites. We're trying to look elsewhere just to try to make a little bit of money. Going chalky doesn't really pay the bills here, but we are on to the 11th race, the Resorts World Casino Manhattan Stakes. 9 horses in this race, 1 3/16 miles. I will start here if you don't mind, because again, I hate to be weirdly chalky, but I just think the program trading is so much better than any horse in this race. Always hitting 100 speed figures, look great in the Turf Classic. I like this. I've been impressed. Consistent, breaks well, finishes well. I've yet to see a bad trip, so I have no reason to think that in a race with only 9 horses here, we'll have a bad trip. But maybe you can help us get some value. And there's another Chad Brown horse too. So
Yeah. Okay. So I'm actually going to share the sheets for this particular race to illustrate a point. Not a point. I don't want to get too into my sheet theory and stuff like that. But I think that based on what I look at, that program trading is maybe the third most likely winner at best. I'm very busy. I'm very busy as almost a lock. And the second best horse I have is actually Strong Quality, who's 15-1. And just to kind of show you, and again, I won't get through all of this, but here's just the ultra basic, right? If you condense everything into one number, for example, basically the lower the number, the better, right? So on the right, you see the race where I'm going to look at. Like you look at, I'm very busy. See this horse over here? Forget his last race for a second. His 2 races before that, he ran 2 6s. So essentially, like the lower the number, the better. And you look at other horses here, like Omaha Honor with like 10s. You have Cortez with 12s. Strong Quality, who I think is the second most likely winner, has 8s. So we're talking about, I'm very busy with 6s, Strong Quality with 8s. And you look at your program trading here, he's running like not even close. I mean, he's got 10s and 10s. He's got 1 8 back over here. Now, again, that's not to say he can't run another 8 or whatever it is. This horse with a 12. Nation's Pride isn't bad, or whatever it is. He might be able to run the 6. But this is kind of what I look at that to kind of gauge what I would like in these races. And so for me, I wouldn't play program trading at all. And I think, again, that I'm very busy, kind of almost a lock. And I think that Strong Quality would be my second horse. So that's just kind of where I am in this race.
Interesting. That might make me flip strategies a little bit. I know I tend to have a bias on horses that have won for me in the previous year. And I'm like, well, especially if it was like a come from behind, I seem to have sentimentality. But we are here at the main event for what people are probably only going to watch in this video. If I know anything about my,
I feel very bad for everybody.
No, people will watch it back.
No, because I don't think I have an opinion here.
Well, that's good, but this is good because this is an interesting race to talk about. Maybe I can just pick your brain because
So let's listen. For those of you that made it this far, I want to just recap something before we get into the picks in this race. While we have kind of your attention, right? This is content stuff. Like you know how like sometimes before you get to a main thing, say, oh, let me pump our sponsor, whatever it is. I'm not going to pump our sponsor. I'm just going to remind everybody what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to find value. Okay. We're just trying to find good EV. We're not like locking in anything. For lack of a better term, how do I put this? These are considered selections I'm considering and possibly bet. Maybe that'll be a good tagline for one of my shows.
Get your own gimmick.
Right. Something to consider.
Gimmick infringement.
But possibly bet. I think, you know what? I'm glad I came up with that. I think I'm going to use that. So
it's not a Lou title unless it's like 90 characters long and is sponsored by Royal Danish Butter Cookies.
That's really fun.
It's either that's my sponsor or Old Granddad Whiskey is my sponsor, and I've been trying to get in touch with them because I want to tell them, you want me to sell the whiskey right now? Here's my tagline.
So let me give you a couple of things.
You're not gonna let me do the tagline? I can't sell you on Old Granddad Whiskey. Your wife will know. Your wife will know. There you go.
Let me tell you what happens in these races. And again, these are just basic tenets that go for all these Triple Crown races. We talked about sports betting when we first spoke a couple of days ago, and how there's typically a bias towards favorites and home teams and things like that. That if you just go ahead and bet underdogs and road teams, you're probably doing okay. When it comes to these Triple Crown races, it's really weird, but what affects odds are a couple of weird things. Number one is any horse that won any of the previous races in the Triple Crown are usually just kind of overbet, okay, in general, because people like to bet guys they've heard of or whatever it is. So all else being equal, Seize the Gray, probably going to be a little bit overbet. My Stick Dan, probably going to be somewhat overbet. So that's like one thing. And Sierra Leone, because he ran so well, probably going to be somewhat overbet. I'm just telling you that kind of going in. I'm going to give you my analysis of the race, and then you could pick my brain or whatever. I really think that the race is kind of a wheel. I think that Sierra Leone, let's put gun to my head, who's the most likely winner, maybe. But remember, this is a mile and a quarter, and there might not be, like, to talk about pace, might not be that much pace to run at in this race. And he's going to be coming from pretty far back. And again, this is not really my field of expertise, but when I kind of look through this race in general, I mean, Seize the Gray wired the field at Pimlico, but that was a pretty slow pace, and he didn't really show speed before that. I mean, you look through this, I mean, there's not a lot of horses that you think is going to really just waltz, make a huge pace. Like, you could make the case that Mind Frame maybe, but even that, I mean, his last race, he kind of walked around the oval a little bit. So it's going to be difficult. Ooh, this is a Rapoli horse. I actually, my son is really good friends with not real Rapoli, but the Rapoli's brother. So we know the Rapolis pretty well. They live like right around the block from us. So Sierra Leone is probably the most likely winner. But if I had to, again, just put a gun to my head, like which horse is probably the best value, I'm probably going to say Resilience. Okay, it's 10-1 in a race that's super competitive, and based on a couple of things that I've been saying, it doesn't look all that great on the racing form, and so I think his odds are going to hold. But if I'm going to, as the kids say, or maybe they don't say anymore, keep it real, I really don't think this is the greatest betting race in the world. So I would probably, if I was actually wagering, I would probably just hope that you're live with other stuff and just go all in this race, or just pick your favorite long shot.
All right. So you're speaking my language with Resilience, but we'll get to that in a second. So typically for me with these kind of races, and again, I'm not an expert, but I like to at least say, okay, who can I toss? Who am I tossing from consideration? Let's just eliminate the field early. I'm not impressed with Protective. Dornoch needs like a perfect trip every time, like needs to break well. You saw it the Derby, was on the rail, needed to probably set the early pace and then hope to hold off horses. Not even close. Wine Steward, again, as an Italian, I should probably be betting somebody sired by Vino Rosso, but not impressed with anything I've seen from Wine Steward. So this is where it gets interesting. You have Antiquarian, who I've seen some steam for this week. People seem to like this horse. I taped Antiquarian. I watched these races. At the Peter Pan Stakes, where he beat Wine Steward and he beat Protective also in this race, it was a really weird trip. He was in fourth or fifth the whole race, and it almost seemed like Wine Steward and Protective, they clashed into each other near the end of the race, and they started going divergent, and he just went through the middle and won the race. I know the speed figure says 98. It just didn't feel like that fast of a race. I wasn't super impressed with what I saw in Antiquarian. And then you have at the Louisiana Derby, and I remember watching that race because that's Catching Freedom and Anna Marie when I was looking for that at the Derby. 6th place for the Louisiana Derby and a horrible race. I've seen a lot of people backing this horse, and it's just not for me. For me, it's one, if I get beat by Antiquarian and they come in the top 3 here, oh well. But for me, I'm just not interested. Seize the Gray, like you said, will be overbet. I think Mystic Dan will be the most overbet horse in the field because people are going to remember, had this horse do on the Derby when it was wet. It's the same distance as the Derby this year because it's Saratoga. And I just think there's going to be a lot of narrative reasons why people want to bet. Sorry, my stick, Dan. I apologize. So this doesn't leave us with much to really work with. Sierra Leone, new jockey in Flavian Pratt, because I don't know if did you hear the reasons for this?
Well, it doesn't. Well, forget the reasons for a second. Let's talk about this for a second with jockey change, because I do want to teach people something. So whenever you have like a change of anything in horse racing, whether it be change of jockey, change of blinkers, change of Lasix, or whatever it is, it creates variance, right? And depending on what type of horse that you're betting, sometimes you want the variance and sometimes you don't. Like if you're betting like an MMA fighter, for example, as the favorite, you want them to do exactly what they've done in the past. Okay, pretty much, right? If you're betting an underdog, you want all kinds of weird shit to happen. And similarly in horse racing, like if there's like a big jockey change or a big, any type of change at all, you probably want to avoid that kind of stuff in general if they're chalk, and embrace them a little more if they're a long shot.
Yeah, I agree. So they changed jockeys because Gaffalione apparently did not follow instructions during the Kentucky Derby. They said, and then like was hand fighting with the Japanese horse, which is really kind of weird and interesting because they were right near there in the race. It was a very strange approach, but Sierra Leone is such an interesting horse. I mean, not at the price, but never really had a bad trip. When it loses, it loses by a nose. Speed figures are always pretty solid. But I can't do 9-5 in this race, man. I can't do it.
Dude, I'll tell you what you can do. Okay. And I'm flipping through the sheets as you're going through this. And I'm glad that we did this show, because I was probably going to pass this race. And I brought up the resilience, but before you toss this horse that you just tossed, I'm like looking through the sheets here. Remember what we just said, right? That lower number, the better, right? So look at Seize the Gray as a 9 in the mud, but everything else is like 13 or 14. And let's go to Sierra Leone for a second. That's the first one. It ran an 8 and ran a 7. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. Mind Frame, 7 and a 9, pretty short also. But look at this horse, the Wine Steward, that you wanted to toss, but it's got an 8 in its last race. And if you want to get too technical about it, ran 13s back at 2, took a time off, and it first started back at 3, it ran a 10. It moved forward, it ran an 8. The horse is like the longest freaking shot in the race. And it doesn't look, as I'm clicking through this, any different than any of the others. So I'll let you continue. And you look at Antiquarian, by the way, that horse is a 7-2, but it's harder to win when you move forward that much. You know what I mean? To repeat that. So before you get into too much of this, I do still think resilience is good value, but I'm also going to really tout this Wine Steward. So I'll let you continue.
I mean, I won't take much convincing to put an Italian horse in my exotics here. Yeah. So now we're not left with much, but there's one horse that is, you have to think, is the biggest wild card in this race, and that's Mind Frame. So Mind Frame, the second favorite right now, 7-2 odds, has the fastest speed figures. Here's the problem. There's 2 issues here. So I watched all of Mind Frame's career. Took me 4 minutes.
Right.
It's all on YouTube. Not hard to find. I know fighters like that where it's like, they're 5-0 and they never been out of the first round. I'm like, so I taped their career in 9 seconds and it was glorious. So here's the thing. Mind Frame's given me no reason to think this might not. I mean, this might be a very special horse. He's blowing away the fields. Now, these are not great fields. The second race, the most recent race, which I cannot remember the name. I should have it up right here. Where was this?
Where, Churchill in his last race?
Yeah, that was the third race at Churchill. It was like a leisurely stroll. Like, didn't need to burn. Nobody wanted to go to the front, it looked like. So he's like, all right, I'll go to the front. And then just kind of cruise controlled it. Once they got down to the final stretch, just took off. The horse looks impressive. This is obviously a big jump in class. I don't think being on the outside is going to matter here. But I don't know. Like, what I worry about this horse is, look, when I took Fierceness like an idiot in the Derby, I said, if you're going to bet Fierceness, you and I talked about this. I said, also have a bet for this horse to like come in last.
Yep.
Because I feel like if it doesn't get a good trip,
yep,
it's just not going to, it's like a temperamental horse. Now, Mind Frame's given me no reason to think that it can't come in second, that it can't have a good run and lose by a nose. I just don't know. I don't know what to do with this horse. It's very confusing to me with such little data. The speed looks good.
Dude, he's 7-2. Just toss him. Seriously.
That's the thing. It's like, I think you would either have to play him up top or you toss him completely.
That's awesome.
And I think in a race like this, I don't want to toss Sierra Leone from an exotic. I don't think you can.
Listen, we have people fighting like all over the world for us, for the United States of America. You can do whatever you want. Okay, you can toss this horse from second, third, and fourth, and no one can tell you otherwise. So don't worry too much about that. I know. Listen, I know it's rough out there. Like he's never not been in the money. And he certainly looks really good. And it would be the 37,000th time in a row that I would have gotten a Chad Brown horse wrong, as previously discussed. But yes, he's very, very likely to come in the money. But like you said, there's not a lot of speed in this race. What if Mindframe does the exact same thing? What if Mindframe just waltzes to the front and backs the field down? Sierra Leone's gonna be last. You know what I mean? And
for most of the race, sure.
And what if it's sloppy and Saratoga ain't no bargain, like in the slot to come from behind. So I don't know. Listen, I know what people are going to say. Well, you know what? The slop in the mud, it swept the field and it was great before. All that is great when you're 9-1. Okay, when you're 8-5, I'm looking for any reason to toss you.
So I have 2-9-5 as my preferred, or 2-9-3 as my preferred play. Resilience, Sierra Leone, Mystic Dan.
Yeah, but you got to use Wine Stewart. You have to, because if you don't and it wins, you're never going to forgive yourself.
I'm going to hate myself. So I'm going to have to reconfigure. And as always, I tweet these things out. Typically, as we go on Saturday, I'll go race by race and tweet out what I think. But I do think that Seize the Gray is going to be. I don't think Seize the Gray is going to come in the money. And I think my stick Dan. Like, and actually, before we end this, because this is what I'm going to ask about Sierra Leone too.
Yeah.
So this is going to be the third race in a little more than a month for both of these horses. And do you think, like, now, how does that now at the longer distance at the Belmont historically is?
Doesn't matter. This is the really big
Doesn't
deal.
matter.
No. We could talk about this for like a long time. So this is a really, really big deal that you're bringing up. So horses are, I know people, oh God, enough already. But horses are even less predictable than human beings. Okay, they're not bred really to do what they're being asked to do. They run their freaking asses off. They get whipped by the freaking jockey the whole freaking time, and some of them are expected to come back like in 2 weeks and do it all over again. Okay, the horses, if people were really trying to treat them right and have them develop right, they wouldn't race more than once every 6 weeks. Okay, and that's really the reality. The fact is that they're purses and they want to get after it. Imagine if, like Usain Bolt, right? Listen, if he's going to race against like other guys in his top class, and he's going to be a huge favorite to win. I'm going back to when he was really good. And then if those guys all race together, like 3 weeks later, he'd probably smoke him again. But let's say that after he raced a huge race, they say, you know what? Go back to the beginning right now, and I want you to start all over again. Against even D1 guys,
against a new field.
Against a new field, it's very difficult to recover from big efforts like that on short rest. Whether it's 6 furlongs, a mile and a half, or a mile and a quarter, and that's why it's so hard to win the freaking Triple Crown, because these horses are not built to do that, and that's why horses that are fresh coming into whatever you call it, the Belmont Stakes, the Saratoga, just are more likely to be ready to roll than horses coming off of the Preakness and that's why it's very, very difficult to do. And that's, again, another reason why, you look at, Resilience has like a month off, it didn't really do all that much since, in the Derby. So it's been chilled. And if it's going to move forward, it's going to be ready to go. And even the Wine Stewart, it looks like some stupid looking horse, right? It never really wins. He's got a couple of seconds and whatever it is, but he's hasn't raced in a month, and he's fresher. When you have these other horses that are just going nuts, like pretty much every race. So Sierra Leone did the right thing. Like Sierra Leone skipped the Preakness, so that's pretty good. But I don't think it matters too much whether it's a mile and a quarter, mile and a half, or whatever. But Seize the Gray, if Seize the Gray wins this, it would be quite a performance.
Yeah, and I think 8-1 probably is about the right price, but we know it's not going to end there. So, well, guys, thanks for hanging in there for an hour. I appreciate it. I would like to thank my guest, Sheets, for sharing all his insight and, more importantly, his racing form.
Yeah.
or this would have been the most haphazard graphics you ever seen on one of my programs. So thank you for spending your time. Anything you want to promote? Anything you want to? Any jokes you have? Tell that one joke you have. No,
I have a couple of good ones.
sorry, I thought I was talking to Monk. Tell that one joke you have, Monk.
So a guy goes into the doctor. Okay, and he goes for his normal checkup, and the doctor says, "Well, I got bad news and worse news." He says, "You have Alzheimer's and you also have cancer." The guy says, "Oh, well, it could be worse. I could have cancer." So anyway, there you go. If you want to look at DFS content, I do content for TrueDFS.com. You can find me on Twitter at SheetsPones, doing other dad jokes like that, I suppose. And thank you for having me on. And what I'm trying to do is to try to get good enough in your good graces that maybe you could take, ask me to go on an MMA things with actual experts when I'm not the only expert in the group.
That'd be a sport I actually sort of understand, unlike the horse race, the ponies.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, we got pay-per-views coming up. Well, actually, we'll see if we have a pay-per-view coming up at this point with this McGregor card. But a lot of actually good cards the next few weeks. I love this upcoming card for bets, and I've been somebody this year. I'm low volume. Like, I don't bet a lot of fights on each card. I pick my spots well. But man, this week I'm like, there's like 8 or 9 underdogs I can justify. There's a couple of props that I really like. There's one that's like plus 2,800 that I love.
Ooh.
So yeah, Baeza
Are you doing the prop stuff still? You're gonna do the prop show?
Yeah, I bring it out for pay-per-views.
Oh, you're not doing it for this week. Okay.
No, but I think I do it on my own show. But the Baeza round 3 subs interesting.
Ooh, okay.
If Puna Haley gasses, but I'm big on Chuck Buffalo this week, which I know is like a super.
Who's that? Radke?
Yeah. It's a pretty divisive.
He's one of several like really live DFS long shots. Like there's a lot of 7K guys with like upside, like Radke. Gomes has a lot of upside. If she wins
for DFS this week, the mid range is crazy. Like the mid range and that that upper 7,000 range is like you're getting I think you should absolutely get a unique $100,000 winner on a 14.
I was even gonna go further. What I suggested in my video today was that I think it's possible that no one hits the optimal. I think you could have like a bunch of long shots come in with like 4,000 left on the table or something like that, and nobody hit. I think that's possible as well.
I think there's and you know what? It's going to be one of these things where I know my friend John Kelly likes to and he said it's not game theory, but he can't avoid it. It's that first fight of the night either just ruins your day, and I think that this first fight of the night with Tumar and Ryan Amanda is going to be like the amazing volatility of you have a high salaried person with a ton of takedown upside with early submission equity versus somebody who's a dog that probably has to win by KO. You're already starting out with a fight where you have to have some of both sides if you're running like 20 lineups. And it's going to be just one of those cards where you almost have to get to like 25 people on the slate. And it's going to be really lineup construction is going to be so interesting. Well, where you almost want to fade that. You almost might try to fade the 9K range.
Yeah, well,
you don't fade it.
Your Katona is going to be the least, the most obvious fade of the year. Honestly,
but that makes that interesting, though. He's got to be 9,600, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that makes that interesting, though, because his ownership's going to be.
It's going to be tiny, and he could get a first knockout.
So that's the thing is like, or like a guy like Stoltzfus. If he wins, I don't know if his ownership might be a little higher than I'm giving him credit for.
No, he's another one. He's another punt that like in his win condition is just going to score. So
and then what do you do at the main event where like they're both in the 8K range and it's probably not going to have a lot of grappling, but it's 5 rounds and lineup construction is super interesting. But that's for another show. Okay. Well, listen, thanks for having me on. We could go on forever. Good luck, everybody. Good luck. And listen, Saturday, that time between when does the MMA fight card start? 5 Eastern.
So between 5 and like 7, we're gonna have all kinds of UFC, Saratoga, all kinds of stuff going on all at the same time. Hope you guys
Go build a role before the fights, and then go spend it on the fights.
Hope you guys do really, really well. And obviously, you know, what Lou does here is just amazing. I mean, I say I feel privileged to be on, but I was telling him offline. I mean, he's one of the few content people that really just makes that combination of entertainment and value. And he's not like egotistical to, I don't want to say dismissively, he doesn't really believe his own bullshit. In other words, he doesn't think he's like better than everybody else. He's kind of a degen just like all of us, but he's sharp enough to know, the difference. So I support everything that he does, and I hope you all do.
When you get team treatment from like psychologists in Vienna 24/7 like I do,
you need a team. That's right.
Guys, I'll see you in a few hours for the happy hour, and good luck this weekend on your bets. Take care.